Good evening, everyone. Happy International Women's Day. I think in the introduction, you forgot to say something very important. I am Member of Parliament for Uasin Gishu County. Uasin Gishu County, hold on. Uasin Gishu County is the source of champions, the home of champions, and the city of champions. It is the home of Eliud Kipchoge, the under 2 hours marathon runner. It is the home of the current reigning London Marathon champion. It is the home of the current reigning Chicago Marathon champion, and Boston, and so on. So yes, we are that country. Now you know where I come from, right? Yes, so, and it's, but also, this is such an important day for me. It's exciting to be here to celebrate International Women's Day, and it's also just fascinating that we are doing it in a place that was founded by a woman, co-founded by a woman. That is particularly significant. As a lawyer who has been in the women's movement since I was practically studying law, this again holds of great significance. I know that today we said we'd talk about the role of women in moving progress, transforming our economies and transforming Africa. I always tell people that is not new. Women have always been at the center of the economic transformation of Africa. I always tell people that think of a picture of an African woman. She's got a pot on her head carrying water. She's got a baby in her tummy, another one on her back, and she's probably carrying a basket to go to the market. So yes, the African woman, and the Kenyan woman particularly, because that's where I have the experience, has always been the producer of food. She's been the one trading, and she's been the one in the process of actually providing for the family. It's just that that story wasn't usually told. And I will explain it this way. And this is also comes from our history. Many people have said that women's rights came with the advent of the English law system when Kenya adopted it. That's not true. Actually, African tradition and Kenyan traditions always respected and had a special place for women's rights. I know people don't believe that, and I'll give you an example. In traditional Africa, women had access and use of property, land, and they were in charge of it. And I always say that women had their matrimonial property was secured, even though it was not codified. Even when, because our society was polygamous, even when the husband took a second wife, they always had to seek the permission of the first wife. And the first wife was always sure that she will never lose her matrimonial home. She was always sure that she will never have an incident where her children are not looked after or disinherited. Today, we go to court to demand our matrimonial property. That has happened to me very recently. I went through a divorce a few years ago, and I remember I had to go to court so that I'm not evicted from my matrimonial home. So I said, but that would never happen in traditional Africa. In our traditions, that could never happen. But now, I have to do that. You have to go to court to ask for child maintenance. In traditional Africa, every child was provided for. There was no time that you'd have to go to court to get a maintenance order, or to get a maintenance order for a woman, for you to be provided for. So yes, right now when we talk about women's rights, I tell people we are going back to what our traditions always secured. And when we talk about women being part of transformation, if you go to any Kenyan homestead in the villages, and I grew up like that, you find that it's the women who milked the cows. So they produce the milk. They're the ones who would take the milk to the market if they needed to sell it. They'll be the ones who produce the vegetables. They're the ones who would tend the sheep and so on and provide food for the homestead. And that even became stronger after colonialism, because this is a part of history that many, again, people sort of omit. During colonial times in Kenya, there was a hut tax, a homestead tax that was put by the colonial government. So all men were forced to go and work for a living wage so that they can be able to get the money to pay for the hut tax. It was also a way of the colonialists being able to get free labor, or almost free labor. So what happened is the women were left at home to do all the household chores and all the economic activities. And that has continued to this day. And so, we realized that women became very innovative. And what they would do is they started to get together in groups. We call them chamas. They would have a group, and there'd probably be a group of 10 or 20. I'm sure many Kenyans who are here know about chamas. Yeah, Cherono, you do, yeah. So the women would get together, and they would each, raise money every month. So let's say each of them would raise 100 pounds, and they would put it together at the end of the month and give it to one of them. And then that one woman would be able to get into an enterprise or do something that she wanted to do. She wanted to buy more chickens or more goats or buy extra cow to be able to continue her economic activity, or till a bigger portion of her land to be able to produce more food. She would do that. And then the following month they would do so on. They call it the Chama merry-go-rounds. So in my work, and we have now tried, and as a legislator, we've tried to make sure that we formalize that process. Because remember, these women had didn't have collateral, so they couldn't borrow from the bank. So they weren't bankable. So they created their own table banking system. And it became so successful that eventually we petitioned the government to establish what we call the Women Enterprise Fund and the Youth Enterprise Fund. What they would do is be able to borrow using a very informal process, because at that time we realized they could do much more if they just had extra capital. And today, I'm proud to say the Women Enterprise Fund is on its 10th year running and extremely successful. And when I joined Parliament, it was even before I joined Parliament, I was instrumental in being able to also petition that the women members of Parliament could be able to access a fund. We call it the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. That fund, again, gives grants. It's not a loan, it's a grant. And we are able to give women groups, and we also focus on people with disabilities, and give them money to be able to enter into enterprise. And it has been so successful because then they do not have to go to a bank, show that they have sufficient money, or be able to provide something as simple as audit books to show that they can make the repayments. So we've made that informal system, used their same system, and leveraged on it. And when we've been able to do that, we've had amazing stories. Like you find at some point, women were producing food from the farm, but now we are able to give them money so that they're able to buy machinery to be able to process, to value add to that food, and then be able to make more money from it. We've been able, some of them have been able that many of them would have the food they produce, which is perishable in some cases, go bad. They would have almost 80% post-harvest losses because they did not have refrigeration facilities. And again, with the Affirmative Action Fund, I've been instrumental in making sure that in every market area, we have put a container, which is a solar-powered cold room, and where they can now put their produce and be able they make more money in effect, because then that way they don't have the post-harvest losses. And coming out of that, we were able again to take them a step further, where they were able to start going into green energy. And so many of them in their farmlands would have the manure waste from the livestock that they have, and with that, we were able to get them to be involved in producing biogas, so that they are using instead of using firewood. Again, we realized that women are very instrumental in being able to take action against climate change, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who bear the brunt of when we have droughts or when we have floods and so on. And someone said to me, oh, we should get the women involved because they're the cause of cutting down the trees. And I said, that's not true at all. In our traditional practices, at no time did women fell an entire tree to get firewood. They would pick twigs or the ones that have aged and fallen down. Because first, they didn't have the machinery to cut down a tree, neither did they have the strength to do it. So actually, they never deforested. So I told the person, please obliterate that from your mind. Actually, the people who protected the forest were always women. It's only later when big commercial harvesters came in, and that was not driven by women. And then the trees would be cut down. So I said, no, let's change that narrative. But again, in Kenya, the government has declared that they want to plant 15 billion trees in 10 years. That's literally 4 million trees a day. That's what I was trying to explain to the minister. I said, do you realize it's 4 million trees a day? And again here, we've now realized that the only way to actually have these trees planted is to use women, because they are on the land every day. You can provide the seedlings to them. As they tend their crop, they can tend the trees. As they tend their livestock, they can tend to the trees, so that we're not just planting trees, but growing trees. And so I constantly told everybody that the only way we're going to achieve this is if we use women. And so I personally believe that women are central to economic transformation. I know that when our current president was being elected, people accused me that I had convinced him. He signed what we called the Kenya Kwanza Women's Charter, and that was his own personal pledge that 50% of his cabinet will have women, that 50% of his principal secretaries will be women, and that he will ensure what we call the 2/3 gender rule will be implemented, because it has never been implemented in Kenya. In Kenya, our constitution says that no more than 2/3 of any one gender will be in any appointive or elective positions. So we should have at least 30% women in parliament, 30% in the... It's too early to clap. It's too early to clap, because even though it was in the 2010 constitution, it's now 10 years later, we still haven't implemented it. Every time, parliament, which has a majority of men, has never passed it. So we said to ourselves, as the women of Kenya, each president that came in would say, you know what? If you vote for me, I will ensure that I implement the 2/3 gender rule. So this time what we did is we told the current president when he was running, we said, you will appear in public in front of the women of Kenya, and you will sign that I, Dr. William Ruto, in person, pledge to implement the 2/3 gender rule. And many people said to me, Gladys, but suppose it doesn't happen. Then I said, then we'll use it against him when he runs for re-election in 2027. We can wave it and say, look, he lied. But luckily, now I think we are at the tail end. Currently, I've attempted 3 times to put that bill in Parliament. It has failed. But this time, at least my political party has taken a position and told the members that we will all vote for it. Because that's the only way it works, is when they are told by the party leader that this is a party position and we expect all of you to vote in favor of the 2/3 gender rule. Most of the men in my political party said to me, Gladys, so if the women take all the jobs, then what will the men do? Then I said, you have them all the jobs currently, so maybe it's just good for you to know. We're not asking for everything. We're asking for at least a few percentages. And yesterday, actually, we had a big launch in Nairobi. Kenya has 7 women governors, and up from 3 from the last time. We're still doing badly, but it's progress. So it's 7 women out of 47 governors. So the first time we had 0 women. In the next election, we had 3, and this last election, we have 7. But yesterday, we have a rallying call from G7, that means 7 governors, women governors, to G24. That's our new rallying call. So yesterday, we launched a strategy paper to be able to have more women in positions of decision making. And I can tell you something, that the women governors in Kenya are actually doing much better than the male governors. In fact, at a recent presidential event, the head of state said, I think we should reserve the position of governors for women because they are all doing tremendously well. And they come from different parts of the political divide, but they are all doing a splendid job. I think those who are from Kenya know that for a fact. And so, because I was told I'm only going to speak for 12 minutes, I think I'm done so that I can have more time for questions. But I must say, I want to congratulate this college. I think you mentioned that you have 51% students are from Africa, and of those, another half are women, isn't it? What were those? Yeah, 51% women. Okay, that's very impressive. Because I remember when I went to study for my master's degree at University of Cape Town in South Africa, I was the only woman in the class and the only black person in the class. I was in an all-white male class. And I remember looking around and thinking, my God, what's wrong with this school? So and I remember the first day we introduced ourselves. So you were supposed to introduce yourself, talk about explain which legal system you studied, and then the class could ask you questions. And I remember somebody asked me the question, are you qualified to be in this class, or is it affirmative action? And I'd never heard the word affirmative action before. So I had to ask the professor to help me answer the question. Yeah, so, so I'm happy that you're in a better place. You're in a school that you can feel comfortable. Yes, but don't worry, I came top of my class from Cape Town and put all of them to shame. So yes, Africa is transforming, Kenya is transforming, but we also believe that the women are the ones who are going to transform Africa. And for your business school, if you want to study business, I think the place to come is Africa, but most importantly, to Kenya. You know why? They say that by 2050, a quarter of the world's population will live in Africa. By 2050, a third of the working class and working labor will come from Africa. And also, Kenya has a vibrant young population. So 60% of the population is going to be, because the population is fast growing, so we've got the labor and we've got the skill. It's got a stable democracy. It's got technology. It's a technological hub for most of Eastern Central Africa. So yes, if you want to study the future of business, you come and study it in Kenya. Asante sana. Thank you.